Talk about your double dose of resiliency. I'm not sure which is more impressive. The Canucks battling back from 2-0 in Edmonton where they didn't have a lot going on offensively, or the Oilers recovering from being stunned by that comeback and finding a way to win.
An impressive recovery for me, for the Edmonton Oilers, because, yes, they were stunned. They gave away a 2-0 lead because the resilient Vancouver Canucks continued to push. But it was Evan Bouchard who finds the back of the net. It all starts with Evander Kane off the forecheck, right through the body of Hronek, disrupts the puck off of Zadorov, and continues. It's batted away inside, kept in by Leon Draisaitl. He goes to work, hands it off, but they just continue to push. They could easily run out the clock. Draisaitl looking for options, right through the middle, and then it's Evan Bouchard who finds the back of the net right through the body of Silovs. But it all starts with the forecheck, being physical, puck separation, and sticking with it, and then Draisaitl does the rest.
And you heard JT Miller just devastated after the game, thought the goal was his fault.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's a level of maturity now to the Edmonton Oilers game that you have to wonder if that's going to help them in what is now a best of three. And what we know is going to help them is a healthy Leon Draisaitl. And maybe for the first time since game one of this series, we saw a healthy Leon Draisaitl. We saw him factor into what turned out to be the game-winning goal in a pretty nifty assist. I mean, Evander Kane with a big hit on the forecheck to establish this play below the goal line, but he gets it out there to Bouchard. Early in the night, here he lures JT Miller into a penalty, and then to rub a little bit of salt in the wound, it's McDavid over to Leon Draisaitl to open the scoring for the Edmonton Oilers on a 1-for-2 power play. So the fact that Chris Knoblauch could use his bench differently and he could split Draisaitl and McDavid up in this game made a difference.
Chris Knoblauch's biggest decision, though, was to start a guy who'd never started in the playoffs in Calvin Pickard. And it's a bold move no matter how much your starter is struggling, and Skinner was definitely struggling. It pays off because they get exactly what they needed. No bad goals, none of those momentum-sapping goals, and multiple big saves.
Yeah, it's a bold move, but it's not a reckless move because Calvin Pickard is 32 years old, has played over 100 games in the National Hockey League, 20 starts this year with a .909 save percentage, is way better than the average in the NHL of .903. And early in the game, there's a power play 3.5 minutes in for the Vancouver Canucks. Pickard had some really good saves early. He made a saves on Connor Garland late in the first period, very important save to be able to keep it close. A save on Brock Besser, 2-on-1 in the second period. These are all big moments in a game for a goaltender. But yes, if you look at Calvin Pickard, he's played really well for the Edmonton Oilers this year, and he followed it up in a different way that Stuart Skinner can play. Stuart Skinner is big, relies on positioning. Calvin Pickard fights. He fights for every hit. He fights for every rebound. And I think that fed a lot of energy for the Edmonton Oilers.
And the moment wasn't too big for him. You mentioned the big saves at the right time. That's all they needed was the right save at the right time. He delivered that. But let's not forget that the Edmonton Oilers were dialed in defensively. They played really well in front of the goaltender, shrunk the ice. They blocked 18 shots. So the attention to detail in front of the goaltender was just as important as the goaltender making the big saves at the right time. They worked hand in hand, and I thought they did a fantastic job to a man. Dregs, you talked about separating McDavid and Draisaitl, but they used their whole roster tonight, which was impressive, instead of just having guys kill time waiting for that top line to go out. So defensively, they're dialed in. The goaltender did a fantastic job, and that's a reason why they won a tight game.
So I'm not sure how you feel right now if you're the Vancouver Canucks, because you saw those devastated faces in the interviews after the game when you lose like that, when you're, 40 seconds away from overtime. But if you take a step back, Dregs, you're even in the series with home ice in a best of three when you've been outshot 124-82, essentially 31-20 a game. So how should the Canucks feel?
Well, I think they should feel pretty good about what lies ahead and flush this game. Not that they played poorly, maybe didn't start on time. They weren't as effective in getting to Cal Pickard as they would have preferred. But the one thing we know is that moral victories do not count in the playoffs. So, okay, they'll take some credit for tying this hockey game and almost forcing overtime. Dakota Joshua was the difference in the third period for the Vancouver Canucks, and he gets credit on the 2-2 goal. We saw Garland float to the middle and bank it in off Darnell Nurse. So, yeah, it's nice that you're able to push and force the Oilers to respond in the fashion that they did, but I think Vancouver looks ahead at the next three games, and they remain confident.
I think they were probably stunned they lost because in these playoffs, it's been magic.
Yeah.
After they have a comeback like that, they're always winning those games. And for the Oilers, really their first must-win, not literal, but virtual these playoffs, and they get it done in the most dramatic fashion.